Welcome back to another Pointless Automotive podcast, our friends.
Hi.
I'm going to adjust the camera real quick so I can see the screen, but let's carry on.
Let's soldier forth. This is indeed another episode of another Pointless Automotive podcast. My name is Frank. I'm sitting here courtside with who?
This is Chadwick again, still on the team.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still here too, like against all odds.
Yes.
And you're still here too. So thanks for hanging out with us. We have been collectively, again, not to get too far over the skis of what we were just talking about before we got on air here, which is some things we've been beating our head against the wall with regards to this E30 over here.
Oh boy.
But it did get us to kind of thinking about, there's some old car tech that is like, it's easy to be like, oh, hey, a new car, like, it's too new, I can't work on that, and I don't know, this and that, and there is a lot of that is very true. But there is also a not insignificant amount of older car tech that is not easier to deal with,
or stuff that
work on, or just live with.
Yeah, or just doesn't perform as well as its modern counterpart.
Yes.
Archaic in design. And the reason we're talking about old car tech is that's what we dabble in, man. You and me we're kind of working on the same kind of cars all the time. It's always 80s, 90s, early 2000s if we're feeling fancy.
Yeah, and sometimes older than that, not super frequently. Not, I used to do more of the muscle car era stuff,
sure.
60s, 70s stuff. Not as much anymore, although I do have my 41 truck that I still tinker with. But it's actually been remarkably reliable.
Much more pros in the tech department for 40s, 50s, and 60s stuff for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Versus 80s and 90s.
But yeah, some of the 80s, 90s stuff, and then we get on there. But we wanted to take a second and talk about some old car tech that is no bueno.
Yeah.
And so there is some good stuff. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But the bad stuff, you know, like us, you know us here. We prefer to make a list of things.
Mm-hmm.
What's on your list? What's something that you wanted to be like? Hey, old car tech.
Yeah.
That sucks.
So for me, it's this first one's going to be something I don't personally like working with.
Are you going to say vacuum because it literally sucks?
No.
Oh,
Great segue. But it's on the list.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to start with carbs. Carbureted vehicles, especially from the 80s. Because I think the early carb stuff is fine because everything's kind of analog, super like mechanical. Right. And then when you started to integrate carbs with more like electronics and things like that, I think it's more complicated, and you have to like massage it to work right on an older vehicle.
Fair.
Like it's like witchcraft at this point, right? You got to get the carb whisperer sometime to get it out, and then God forbid you buy something with aftermarket carbs. It's never going to pass if your state has emissions or anything like that. Good luck, sir.
And it's funny that you say carb with regards to like way of finding stoichiometric mixture to put into your engine to burn. There's also the other aspect of CARB, which here in the lovely state of California, CARB also stands for the California Air Research Board, or the CARB, which comes down to emissions, which is problematic on old cars. And I'll get back to that. But specifically, as you just said, here in California, like a lot of people will be like, oh, I've got my, we just saw an ad for an 82 Ford EXP, which Google it if you are uninitiated.
And you should know this.
And it got touting as an upgrade. Oh, got a sweet, like 2-barrel Weber carb on it, downdraft. It's like, great, that probably actually does make it run a little bit better.
When tuned,
which is another animal. But doesn't mean you can register that car here in the state.
Yeah.
You can't even sell it because you have to smog it here in California before you sell it on to the next owner. So the carb and the carb here in California is a formidable.
For sure. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of guys that love carbs. They're like, if you grew up with muscle car stuff, that's like, you're used to that. And I will agree that like early EFI was pretty bad.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
Especially with some of the German cars, you really had to have a specialist that could fine tune that system.
Yes.
But it got pretty good pretty quick for most cars. So for me, I'm just going to say that's an old tech item that I look around. I don't really look at cars with carbs, and if it's been modified at all, I don't want to get into that because it's just going to take way too much time. The benefits aren't there. So there we go. Old tech that sucks, in my opinion. Working with carburetors.
That it's also too with carbs, because I have carbs on my list, and I'll pivot so we're not doubling down on carbs too much. But another thing with carbs
gains, bro.
Right,
Carbs.
exactly, sick
Carbo.
gains. But the whole thing with carbo loading is, when we're talking about old cars, a lot of them, if you're looking to buy an old car, it's been sitting for a little bit.
Usually.
And carbureted vehicles do not enjoy sitting for big chunks of time.
Oh, they don't.
Because there's all different, you've got jets and things within the carb that'll clog up. You've got, check balls and stuff that you get a little bit of, when you're dealing with old gas in a full fuel tank, you've got 10 gallons in it. Like, there's a little bit of life in that for a little bit. You get much over a year, and you're really kind of literally
years
fire
pushing it, yeah.
But in a carb, it's a small amount of gasoline. It's in small little passages and things. It's in the float bowl and things like that.
Yep.
But it's in sitting with passages and stuff. And they'll turn the varnish and turn the goo. Stuff's not going to work. Even if it feels like, oh, hey, it just fired right up. Great. It's not going to be quite right. You're going to be always, if it's going to be sitting for a little bit, you're always going to be chasing the drag of getting it rebuilt or putting stay build in the tank and doing stuff like that.
True.
Let alone, vacuum lines and stuff that would be connected to that carb, which is a different thing. So again, not to double up on carbs, but there's a lot to consider with a carburetor, especially of the, the early emissions.
Oh boy.
Overlapping with early EFI era.
Yeah, 70s, 80s.
Right.
Ooh, fun stuff.
And so on that front, that's what I wanted to talk about is, the late era carbs are a pain. Early era fuel injection, specifically Bosch CIS,
yes,
or the K-Jetronic as it's also known,
oh.
it's one of those things where on paper, like if you read like the theory on how it works, like, oh, that's actually pretty straightforward.
Makes sense.
That's actually very easy.
Yeah.
Basically, like you have fuel pressure, everything is controlled by basically pressure in and pressure out, and that's how it finds its mixture and it distributes it to each cylinder.
Yep.
And you've got a fuel distributor, and you have a fuel pump and a filter, and then like a pressure regulator of some kind, and that's it in its most basic form. Fuel injectors, which don't even fire. They get hit with pressure, and once it gets to a certain pressure, it fires.
Yep.
It doesn't even fire; it just bleeds past the injector. It's a very simple thing. However, what worked great in 1982 or 1983 or 4 or whatever,
when it was brand new,
when every single component on there was brand new,
perfect.
was great. It worked. It didn't exactly add a lot of power, but for what they were trying to do, which was add reliability and fight through emissions, great.
Yeah,
great. The moment you start having seals that start leaking in all of the system, because everything is like very, very, very persnickety when it comes to fuel pressure.
Yep.
Or you have some fuel distributors and lines that are partially plugged up because, again, it's sat with fuel in it. Or you've got a vacuum line, or an air intake leak, or this and that, and about a million certain failure points.
Yeah.
And unlike a lot of things where like, oh, if X, then Y, it's like, if X, which is, you've got a fuel mixture issue, then your issue, it could be one of hundreds of different things. And if you're Joe Blow mechanic, like I consider myself, probably not even Joe Blow. Joe Blow's toddler child that likes to hand the dad the wrench.
Little Joey Blowy.
Exactly, so to speak. You're on the list now, by the way. But
can't be on it more than once.
Yeah, we're trying to like fight through one of those systems, and I know this dealing with my 924 turbo, is kind of nightmarish, because unless you're like a true expert in working on this systems and really know what you're looking at, it's hard. And then you don't have the right tools, because there's like, well, there's this special pressure system tester that's for this one application in this one car.
That's it.
For this 2-year thing, because again, early fuel injection stuff is moving a mile a minute, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, in this one couple of years it had this, and then they changed it for the next model year, and then the model year after that they added a warm-up regulator, and then after that they added a feedback injector, and then a cold start injector, and then like they kept adding things to it, and it just added complexity to a simple system. It sucks.
Yeah, and it was kind of a self-contained system, so it didn't have like the redundant checks like now with an air fuel mixture off, the ECU can pull timing and do things like that.
Right.
With these older cars, it was like, no, something's wrong, it's going to keep running wrong, right? It has nothing to save it, you have to tune it. And that's why they change something every 2 years, because those customers with newer cars were experiencing issues you shouldn't see within a couple years, 3 years.
Yeah, that, and you had like tightening emissions, and you had different markets that would do
bad timing overall, yeah. That period, yeah, the 70s, 80s tech, that crossover right there is really rough. There's a lot of like very experimental stuff being pushed out quick.
And you know what is interesting? It's like, I wonder about that now, right? Because back then it was just like, oh, there's safety and emissions, these regulations are coming hard, so a lot of these manufacturers were scrambling to put, you know, thermal reactors on in the early 70s before you had catalytic converters and smog pumps and all this vacuum lines and pulling timing and all this stuff as a reaction to regulations. And now we're running into newer cafe regulations and stuff, and so you're getting, you know, Volvos have their like weird turbo hybrid 4-cylinder electric supercharger, whatever madness, and there's a lot of everything is now turbocharged and variable, this and that, and you know that's a whole different episode in and of itself. But I wonder if like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, where people are going to be looking back at cars from the modern era right now and just being like, these are impossible to work on.
Yeah,
stuff is going to be super cheap because you can't run them. Fuel's going to be $80 a gallon or whatever. But I wonder if it's like there's going to be a level of complexity of what's pumping out now to get through the same regulations very similar to the 80s and 70s and 80s. We're getting a whole era of cars people don't want to touch.
Well, I mean, I think we still have a modern example with Dieselgate, right?
Yeah.
That's relatively recently, and a way to skirt around emissions and still get decent power output, because if those things were neutered the way they should have been, it's like you'd have too slow of a car for, especially for the American market. We wouldn't want like a Passat TDI that accelerates in like 14 seconds to 60.
Yeah, exactly. The golden era.
I wouldn't live upstream there, but I mean, it's still, there's still those opportunities, and it's a challenge. Like when you want to, meet emissions and still have that horsepower, efficiency, all that, like efficiency and performance usually butt heads somewhere, right? And you gotta join what team, right?
Yeah.
But I get it, and this technology is so, when you get it so specialized, so perfectly balanced, it's hard to mess with, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
For us in a garage working on 30-year-old versions of these modern cars, what's it going to be like?
Right. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. I mean, we're sitting here talking about stuff from the late 70s and 80s, and into some stuff into the early 90s. But can you believe I want to say like the last year of a carbureted Jeep Wrangler was like 94 or something, like really.
They really dragged it out. There were some other ones,
V6, or the inline six.
What else could you get? I think Ford Festivas had them carbureted pretty long too. There's some of the cheap Econo boxes came with them. I know
Toyota stuff was all pretty well. I know you can get, I think, a carbureted truck until like 88 or 89, but all the cars were pretty.
Some of the Mazda pickups, right?
The D series.
Yeah, and the Sentras. Nissan had a couple older.
Yeah, like base. Super basic
car.
Or just like they just do it only to like
Honda CRXs, man. They came carbureted.
Yeah, Civics. I think you can get a carbureted Civic to like 91 or 92.
Wild, right?
Pretty late, but yeah. Like,
what a horsepower gap too between those and the EFI like performance versions.
Yep.
Like an SI, a base carb model was like double the horsepower, same displacement.
And what else is out there of old car tech?
You ready for this one?
Oh, I am ready.
Let's stop for a moment.
Stop and wiggle with it.
Drum brakes.
Ooh. Well, if they're out of round, they will wiggle with it.
They will wiggle with it, or they just won't work at all.
Yeah.
Because every time I've opened drum brakes, especially an old Honda Civic,
like broken springs.
The shoes are like the metal pad. It's the actual.
Yeah, the rivets that riveted on are just like laying in the bottom.
Oh my god, they're shiny, polished. Drum brakes for me, combination of being an inefficient braking system, way too complicated to work on, especially if you're doing like drum brakes for the first time in like 200,000 miles. All those springs, all that hardware is usually crusty, impossible. Most of it breaks, so you're in there for new hardware, and the aftermarket hardware never works perfectly. Like the springs aren't the right, I don't know. It's a nightmare, man.
You go to use the adjuster on the back of the housing, and it's all rusted in place, and you gotta like beat on it, heat it, beat it, trying to get the drum off.
Yeah, after you fling the springs like 1,000 feet through the air in your garage, it's just. And then at the end of the day, you're rewarded with subpar braking if you did it right.
You can stop really well one time.
It's horrible. And then the thing that really boggles my mind, we're talking about technology that held on too long. Drum brakes in base models in the 2000s.
Oh, for sure. Like, I'm wondering.
Honda Fits have drum brakes.
A lot of trucks. I'm trying to remember what the very last. Is there anything that you can get drum rears on?
Do they still sell the Fit? Dude.
Yeah, like I'm thinking maybe that current the much maligned Mercury Mirage might have it.
Oh, Mitsubishi Mirage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. But I know the Fit came with it. There's still, and it was usually like the Econobox, the cheapest version, came with drums.
Let's see. I'm looking right now. It looks like 74 might have been the last year to get with 4-wheel drum brakes.
Okay.
Which if you've ever driven a car with 4-wheel drum
It's
brakes,
ridiculous. Yeah.
Again, it stops fine one time.
Well, when
they're in good shape.
Yeah.
Any if you try and do multiple hard stops, it's like you add 30 feet of stopping distance from 60
Sure.
every single time until it gets to a point. I remember my Barracuda, you would literally one time I was going fast, driving down, and I tried to stop, and I end up in like an actual intersection.
Sure.
Like past the limit lines.
Well, that's the thing. When we're talking new cars with drum brakes, yeah, they work. But like you're talking about, they're usually disregarded. People, your rears don't wear as fast as the fronts. We all know that.
Right.
Most of the percentage of braking force is distributed to the front, but they just don't get maintained as often. So when you're buying a 30, 40-year-old car with drum brakes on the rear, they're at like 10% health.
They're hanging on.
Yeah, it's just something, man. It's just something about having drum brakes on modern cars still just upsets me a little bit on an emotional level. I shouldn't be letting it get to me, but I actually avoid cars with drum brakes. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't like servicing them, and I don't like the performance.
Yeah, I can see that.
I said it. I'll die on that hill,
Fair.
Down with drum brakes.
And that's the thing too is, when we're talking to older stuff that we're dealing with, because maybe on a newer car, they're not as terrible. I don't know, but traditionally, just the way they're set up, is when you're looking at a car that's 20, 25, 30 years old, and it's got drum brakes in the rear. The good thing with the disc brakes, you look at it, put your eyeballs on it, you can see the components. If something is wrong or needs maintenance, you can be like, oh, that is wrong and needs maintenance.
Yeah, visual check, really easy.
People don't do true preventative maintenance. They just don't. They should, but they don't. So you should be, every 15,000, 30,000 miles, whatever, pick your delineation. Like, hey, shop, if you're not doing it yourself, you want to pop those off and make sure everything's up to snuff.
Yep.
Really inspect them, but it doesn't happen. Nobody wants to pay.
Some of them have a visual inspection hole where you can kind of look in and see the shoes.
Yeah,
I think there's something like that.
Like a pile of broken springs and fluid and all kinds of stuff.
Sparks coming out when you're trying to stop.
Yeah, so it just adds another wrinkle to it's all internal, so I can't see what's going on here. So I'm just going to close my eyes and plug my ears and ignore it. Then people like us buy the cars and inherit those problems.
Yeah, exactly. So we get a good deal usually.
It is.
And it becomes not a good deal. But anything else, old car tech, that you don't enjoy? The cars we traffic in?
So I do want to give a quick shout out to the 70s and the 80s specifically, into the 90s. Really the era of vacuum lines. And not just vacuum lines under the hood. Because we kind of brushed on that a little bit before. Because some of those later carb situations where you're running, you've got a carb and you can't even see it because it's in a nest of 38 different vacuum lines. And
crisscrossed across the engine bay, wrapped up in each other.
You got to try and find the correct vacuum diagram and try and figure out where things go. And
before someone else tried to do their own vacuum line.
Yeah, and some of the best sections of hard line in them, and the hard line will be, plugged up from years of corrosion and stuff and all that. But it goes beyond that because you had stuff where you had, vacuum actuated pop-up headlights, or vacuum actuated locks. I want to say, was it the Porsche 928? I think for a long time had vacuum actuated door locks.
Everything was vacuum
actuated. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Vacuum actuated soft close features and things like that.
Vacuum actuated sensors.
Which are, again, back to some of the fuel injection stuff. Great when new.
Yeah.
But when not new and not working, whole different ball of wax.
Yep.
So, yeah, you've got that. And then even stuff like, you had HVAC systems that were like, you change it from hot to cold, and the blend door is vacuum actuated.
Yeah.
And it'll have a vacuum pod or like a sphere as like a vacuum reservoir. And all of that stuff with age will crack and it'll fail, and you gotta pull the whole dashboard apart, because otherwise you're like, it'll also always be jumping around from like the defrost or the floor or whatever, the vents, and like all over the place because of these issues with just aging vacuum powered components where it's just like, I just like the manual linkage, and like I slide the slider and it's done.
That mechanical clunk.
Yeah,
Switch.
You can like feel the door.
The blend door. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Easy. But there's so much of that stuff. You know, I know Volvos are kind of notorious for that, and some other makes with the vacuum HVAC stuff. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like things that can leak unnecessarily.
And they always do.
Yeah.
Like that's unavoidable. There's a vacuum line, and the thing with vacuum lines is like novice folks will throw parts at a bigger issue when it's actually caused by a vacuum leak. They'll think something's wrong with my engine, something's wrong with the ECU, something's wrong, and they chase all these problems, they start replacing sensors, and at the end of the day, they find out it's a vacuum leak.
Right.
Or you boost leak test the vehicle, or you check all your vacuum lines and find a big open connection or a ripped up line. I've seen so many people chase issues and have a car run poorly, especially these cars that are totally reliable. Then you talk about turbo cars, right? Where vacuum and boost pressure, everything on how well that car runs. And I've seen people just chase issues, throw parts at problems, and then to vacuum,
then you
to
just
boost leak.
You spend a second like chasing around with a can of carb clean.
Yeah, right.
In the engine bay, trying to find something.
Yeah, anything, bubble, soapy water, do anything you can, find those leaks. But yeah, I agree. Vacuum technology, oof. I know we're getting away from it. Almost all the sensors are electronic now.
Yeah.
But yeah, those early 80s, all the way to the 90s, a lot of vacuum lines.
Yeah, a lot of vacuum lines, and then you start running into issues with those other things where you've got so much stuff that's vacuum powered, and you start modifying the car.
Sure.
Right? You put a different cam in it, now it's not pulling the same amount of vacuum at idle, and then you start having stuff where, you have like your pop-up headlight to put at idle will slowly start falling in. You gotta give it a pedal and like wake back up like it's falling asleep.
But it's
weird stuff like that.
It's wild. So like my Subaru, which I had to do like a head gasket, a whole bunch of stuff on, it has a line that goes to the turbo that has a little like plastic pill in there that kind of regulates pressure.
Yeah.
And if you just replace that without knowing that pill's in there and you put a regular vacuum line in there, you won't be able to boost.
Yeah.
It's like the most ridiculous, like these little things.
Silly.
Silly.
What else is on your list, my friend? Is that it?
I've got one quick call out.
Yeah.
You mentioned if something fails, you have to pull your dash apart to access it, and that's a pain in the butt. Cheap plastics.
Yeah.
80s, 90s, a lot of cars were notorious for having cheap plastics. I'd rather do a timing belt job, pull an engine apart, because at least I know I can bolt it back together. But you get in there and you start manipulating 30, 40-year-old plastics that were never well built from the beginning.
Right.
You're breaking clips, you're breaking everything. Just one of those things I don't like. And they got so much better. Like a lot of the 2000 stuff has a lot of pliability to it.
Right.
It's built in like flexibility, so it's actually made to be pulled off. You can be pretty rough with the panels.
Yeah.
Like the Accord, like that, and that dash isn't ever going to crack. I took the glove box out, I took the kick panel out to do some work to it. But you go do that, start doing that on 30-year-old cars like that.
Yeah. And back to 80s Volvos, I know like half of those out here, like you get any of those 240s, 740s, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all the plastics down the pillars are turned to dust, and in the rear package tray, it just literally turns into like ash.
Yep.
Every plastic vent, God forbid you have to pop one of those out or put it back in. You might as well just go ahead and buy them first.
Just cut it out.
Because it's just gonna uninstall it with a hammer. You might as well, because it's not coming out in one piece. I don't care what you do, because it's just dry.
Yeah, I figured I'd call it out because that's one of my personal things. I hate having to do anything with a dash. Especially on an older car with that cheap plastic, and it always makes that creaky noise when you know you're pushing it. It's like foreshadowing what's happening.
It's like it mirrors like your internal screams, like as you're doing it.
Yeah, and I try to drink wine, listen to some like soft R&B to kind of so I don't Hulk it. Still break everything.
I can picture it now. Yeah, you just like do it by candlelight.
Yeah. There you go. sweeten her up before I move in with the power stuff.
Yeah, spit on it first. The only other one I can think of is just a quick shout out to old, and this is more like pre 70s stuff, but really truly old electrical stuff.
Yes.
Where you've got like various ballast resistors and fusible links hidden in random places, and you've got like manual voltage regulators. You ever played with one of those?
I have. Well, here's the thing. Like when new, like you said, worked fine. We're talking what 50, 60 years now.
Yeah, and it's wild. Like a manual voltage regulator, literally, it's almost like a points in ignition.
Sure.
Where it's open, and close. So like when voltage gets too hot, voltage too high, it opens, and the voltage drops, and it closes again, and it goes back and forth. And that's why you'll see a lot of old cars if that voltage regulator is not quite right. You'll see it on motorcycles too. Sitting there at night at an intersection, you'll see the headlights strobing.
Oh yeah.
You know, sometimes on a newer motorcycle that's by design, it's like a safety thing. But if you'll see an older bike or an older hot rod and sitting there, you'll see the they give it throttle and it comes back up. That's the old. It's literally a tiny little box. It's click, 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 click.
Yeah, but not even wear and tear, like just corrosion. Those things could not operate.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it was dead. You could chase a lot of issues thinking it's like an idle issue or something with the engine.
And then you've got it's just corrosion. It's just like it's just old.
Yeah.
And then you go to get the parts, and the good parts aren't available anymore. So you got to get some knockoff brand one, and maybe it'll work, and maybe it won't. And then you got to try and set. Maybe the gap is wrong. You have to re-gap, crack it open, pull the little pins off the back, and pull it off the board. What a pain. And then you same with ignition, right? You've got points, and condensers. And some of that stuff to really get it where it wants to be, you got to use like one of those huge rolling cabinet like dwell, like attack and dwell, and like you measure all that stuff and you adjust it, and it's just it's hairy. So it's easy to like complain about electrical stuff now, but some of the old electrical stuff is like a mashup of like truly manual analog stuff, controlling electrical stuff, and it's kind of a wild deal.
Yeah, that's why the 80s and 90s were pretty challenging at times, because you do have that vacuum shaking hands with electronic sensors, and it's usually a combination of the two. Mm-hmm. So, and they don't work without the other. It's fun.
Yeah, you'll have like a MAC sensor that uses a vacuum line to manifold, and like is it the sensor bad? Is it the vacuum line bad? Is the manifold got a plug in it? Is the connection to the actual sensor bad? You've got like several fail points for like one little.
Talk about feeling old though. We're talking. I still feel like 90s stuff is still pretty modern. Right. But we're 30 years. It's ridiculous, man. It's like classic. It's the classic car now.
It is
like the 80s and 90s stuff.
It's kind of wild.
It is wild. Okay, how about
go?
You want to pivot to positivity real quick?
We can, and mostly because it's like there is some old tech stuff that doesn't rule.
Yeah, it does not suck.
It's sweet.
Yeah,
it's quite nice. What old car tech stuff do you enjoy? Do you prefer to imbibe?
Hydraulic power steering.
Okay.
Not necessarily just for working on, but just for feel. Like I really think that's a sweet spot, and that's 80s and 90s stuff. Yeah, early electronic steering was horrible.
The early stuff is brutal. It's gotten a lot better. There's some stuff that's pretty decent.
There were some decent ones, like an S2000. S2000 is pretty good.
It's fairly numb, but it's quick, and it's weighted right, and it feels generally pretty good. It's not super communicative.
It's not, no, but it is tight, it is taut, it does match the chassis. Like I think with the Econoboxes that first adopted this technology.
Are you talking about my Honda Civic Hybrid, sir, that has hands down the worst steering on the.
How much dead space is off center on that car?
It's pure dead space. There is no on center.
You're sawing at the wheel and you're still straight.
Well, no, it's the other way around. It's you're sawing out the wheel to get it to go straight, because it's always like not wanting to quite be on center, and it's and it's the most numb, inappropriately weighted. It's brutally bad. And so that's the point.
That's the other thing, right? Because it started off super floaty, super like vague, and then they're like, we need to compensate with some artificial weight, and then for no reason the steering weight would be there in a situation where it shouldn't be. It's just, I don't know, man. I think hydraulic power steering or manual racks, like in my Miata.
That's what I have on my list, is the manual
rack.
Good
Lord, like it just, I could feel like mid-corner if a tire's starting to lose traction, or I just went over a rock about this big in diameter, you know? It just that feedback.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the manual rack thing. And here's the thing, like it's kind of never coming back. There's gonna be some examples.
They were hydraulic racks back for some things.
I mean, on some stuff,
Yeah.
but like fast forward 10 years from now,
Probably not.
I don't think we're gonna have. What did I see? Toyota is doing a complete steer by. They did like a complete steer by wire.
There's been a lot of
Concept.
prototypes and concepts that have
But I
done
think
that.
but I think it also couples it with the Tesla yoke steering wheel.
Okay.
So that way, because their theory is saying like, hey, like the reason people don't like the stupid topless yoke steering wheel is because
we usually like topless things.
sure, but in this case, it's not good because if you ever have to go hand over hand, you're like grabbing air.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So their figure was like, well, we'll eliminate that by making it's pure steer by wire, so it's like extreme variable. So like parking lot speeds, like you'll have like quarter turn lock to lock, but then at like freeway speeds, it'll be like standard, and so it's completely variable.
I feel like there is already that variable.
I mean, they have variable, but that's I don't know if it's about like going from like
Not that much.
like
That's,
3 turns lock to lock to like 0.5 turns lock.
are you excited for your computer to mess that up on the highway?
Well, yeah, that's
Put you
what
at like parking lot, so you do a little lane change and you do it full. Like,
yeah, and I think it's like
Rear end
pure steer by wire, so there is no physical connectivity.
I thought that was something they had to do, like for a safety feature, is there had to be a physical
I think so.
connection,
I don't know,
right?
Maybe the grease the skids of some politician somewhere who will snake a pork barrel out into something. I don't
Were
know.
there old cars where it was like a crash risk, so they built in like a crumple thing in the steering wheel?
Yeah, the collapsible
and it could
steering
still
column.
like it could do that when you're driving, like it just failed, and you'd like lose your steering.
I don't know if it would
I
do
kind of
well, they
remember-
have the old like rag joints.
Yeah,
The old rag joints and stuff like
That were never maintained.
Yeah, but like my Barracuda was my 65 Barracuda is collapsible steering column.
Yeah, you're
So
taking.
if I decide to like
taking
take
it
a
from
brick
the team.
wall, I just get Hadouken right through the chest.
Is it through your chest or is it lower? You hope it's through your chest.
It would be chest-ish. You know, it'd be. Are you familiar with the movie Commando?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let off some steam, Bennett, as he like throws the pipe through the comically out of shape villain that's like somehow like going toe to toe with Arnold in his prime.
Which is ridiculous because he used the exact same shtick on the Predator movie when he said "stick around" after he
stick around.
stuck the guy with a knife to the
Yeah.
wall.
That was good. Commando is maybe my favorite movie as far as one-liners go.
No, the original Predator.
Original Predators.
Not just
like,
Arnie, but everybody had great lines. Like Jesse the Body Ventura had a
yeah, that was good.
This stuff will turn you into a sexual tyrannosaur.
It's funny because like at the time we thought that was just like part of his like shtick, and it turns out that's actually who that dude is.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But like
He didn't have script.
exactly.
That was he was thought he was fighting a predator.
Don't mind my friend, he's dead tired. As he like breaks the guy's neck on the plane and like puts the pillow over him, and then he just jumps out of him like a taking off airplane like 747 from like 400 feet, lands in a swamp and like hits the ground running. Like,
Yeah, dude.
yes. Do you remember when I said I'd kill you last? I lied. And he just drops the guy off the cliff.
It's like McBain from The Simpsons.
Exactly. I used to see you.
McBurn!
Anywho, I also have manual steering on my list, and as an addendum to that, I would like to add the fact that we actually had also lightweight cars to match that manual steering.
Yeah,
It's not exactly tech.
Don't
per
go
se.
too far back. Some of those muscle cars were freaking lane yachts.
Fair, but that's not the manual steering I like, because those ones you literally had your like 28-to-1 steering ratio.
Sure.
Because it was manual, and then you had the corresponding huge, incredibly paperclip thin rimmed wheel.
Yeah.
You had to turn it like 11 turns from one direction and 11 the other, just to be able to parking lot turn it.
Yeah, that steering wheel's diameter allowed you to touch your knees and the roof at the same time when you were turning it almost. It was,
Well, because you had a huge heavy car with a manual rack.
Right.
You have
that's a
to do
simple
that.
machines right there. Someone did that math. What is the diameter or circumference of the wheel have to be to?
There it is.
So much input force to turn.
Yeah, that's in someone's like
You know what's
Math 100A.
Exactly.
exam right now.
Lightweight manual rack. I'm going to point to this Miata behind you.
Yes.
Because it benefits a lot from having a manual rack, and it's a 2,000, 2,100 pound car.
Yeah,
It's the perfect combination.
2,100 pounds was light for early 90s.
Sure.
Light for now is literally that at 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
If you've got a 3,100 pound car, that's like, oh wow, that's actually really light. You're cooking with gas
I
now.
kind of feel like the BRZs and GT86s come in just under 3, right?
Yeah, I think they're like 29.80
It's
or
wild,
something like
right?
that.
Like,
They're
that's a
like
light
23.
car.
I think like a stripper Cayman is like 32.
Now. They've gone up a little bit.
I think a modern Miata is like 31.
No.
Are they under two? Are they
Miatas, the ND did an amazing thing and actually shrunk down.
Yeah, they lost
so
like
they went
80
to like
pounds or something,
22 to 2300. So I think an RF's a little more. I'd say 23.
I'm
For
going to
an
consult
ND2.
later. We're thinking about it. But yeah, either way, the point stands.
Bro, I bleed Miata. My blood type is MX5. No, I think 23 and change for a modern one.
This
The
says
RFs.
curb weight is 2341 to 2403.
Yeah,
So you're pretty much on the bus.
Boom, baby.
Yeah. So there you go. 2021 Miata.
So the
carrying the torch for the modern lightweight.
Absolutely. And then you had the oddballs like the Lotus Elites and stuff. But
those were kind of especial. But yeah, I don't know if that's tech, and I think that's part of the problem, right? Is the lack of tech on some of the old stuff and feature creep is was able to keep those weights down. But yeah, it's hard to have a manual steering in a car that's 3,000 plus pounds.
Sure.
4,000
Yeah,
plus
that's
pounds.
fair.
So that's why some of the manual steering
NSX.
it's not going.
My NSX was 2,800 and
Yeah.
change, and it had manual steering.
It did.
Parking lots were not too fun.
Yeah, but
There wasn't a lot of
there was
weight.
a lot of weight over the nose.
Yeah, not a
so
lot.
that helps you out a little bit. One other thing, because that was kind of an addendum to yours. I want to drop a. You know what I miss? Old tech that ruled.
Yeah,
Knobs, switches,
dude.
buttons.
Yeah. That's so true.
And I get why some of those things aren't around anymore. It's not so much the knobs and the buttons, but like there's some really cool like ornate switches and stuff on like 60s and 70s stuff, and 50s stuff. Well, they don't exist anymore because like you get a wreck and get like your eye gouged out by an ornate like metal turn signal stock or something like that.
You gotta pay to play.
That's right. Yeah, just have like various like impalement objects like on your dashboard just to keep you honest when you're driving, make sure you're not tailgating
And like solid tactile knobs, right? Like where it clicked each setting. I love that feeling. Like it has weight to it. That's like a Bentley thing. I feel like Bentley has probably some of the best knobs.
I think some of the Lexus stuff still does that.
Yeah, they're really good about
I
that.
mean, I haven't sat in 20 plus anything in a long time.
Yeah, true.
I don't play in that side of the pool. But a lot of it doesn't have knobs anymore. So I'm not exactly up with the standard bearer is on knobs. But being able to, it's funny, you'll see, if you ever watch like anyone really doing car reviews now, there'll be a lot of complaining about a lack of some knobs and stuff like that. But there'll be a big complaint about like, hey, you get in this car and it takes a while to figure out how to operate things.
Sure.
And I don't necessarily find that to be a huge deal because if you buy a car, you figure it out. Like you get used to it. It's not that big a deal. But one thing, the cool benefit of knobs is once you've had a car for a little bit, you never have to take your eyes off the wheel. Because it's reflexive. It's like it's not even like okay, I figured this out, so I know where things are. There's not even thought.
Yeah.
Versus like having to go through menus and screens. It's like there's literally a knob here and there's a knob here, and maybe there's steering wheel controls if you're really high flying.
Oh boy.
But like I don't know. It's very silly, and I think a lot of people do kind of make much to do about nothing about it. But for at least the really important stuff, that is good old car tech, and that is tech I would like to hang on to, and I miss in a lot of instances. What other are old car tech rules?
I'm going to take a broad swing at this.
Oh.
Old tech that doesn't suck
Yeah.
is a lack of tech.
Fair.
Hear me out on this.
I'm listening.
Integrated nav screen, HVAC controls, touch screen, haptic feedback. All these things are modern.
Yeah.
But 30 years, you and I both know that technology gets outdated so quick, right? That nav screen probably not going to work in most places. Not going to be viable.
Yeah.
Those
no longer supported 10 years out, so all the maps like you can't even like keep updated even if you wanted to use them.
What about the screen itself and everything that helps that screen function? If your HVAC's buried in a screen like that, I just want to put the AC on today. Get in my 1990s car, put the switch to red to blue, maybe adjust the fan speed if I'm feeling super spicy.
You know what the most overrated and not even that particularly modern, but like within the last 30 years modern feature that people, I personally anyways, I find a complete waste of time.
Auto climate control.
Auto climate control, specifically though, dual zone climate.
I like dual zone.
I never, ever use it. More often than not, I'll get in the car and I'll like adjust mine, and then the other one won't move, and I'll like, I have to like adjust it to match or find them. Well, sometimes they don't have them, or like it's super like complicated to try and find them, and I'm like, yeah, and I don't want to deal with it. I just want to turn the heat on, or turn the air conditioning on, or put it in the middle, and be done, and not have to worry about like them reaching the other one, or having them reach and like, oh, I'm cold, and they're changing it because I don't care, but then they only change theirs, and then you get this.
Is your significant other from California as well?
Yes.
So you guys are both used to the same climate.
We are co-acclimated.
So
yes.
I'm from the state of Maine, which is
Yes.
completely different. So I always like to
The
be
Maine
cold.
vein, if you will.
Yeah, the Maine is Maine vein. And I like it cold when I drive, but California ladies tend not to like to be cold
Sure.
in a car. So
Sure.
in that case, I've actually used it
Interesting.
multiple times.
Yes.
And it is of some use.
Okay. Well, I guess socially you're playing in a different
Yes.
ballpark than I am, to put it lightly.
Yeah,
so I have not run into that. I tend to just be like,
I do.
whatever. And if somebody else wants it at a different temperature, I'm very rarely like uncomfortable if they're just adjusting to whatever.
Sure.
I don't care.
But I'm with you on auto. I feel like auto is kind of ridiculous. Like
It's just like, here's the temperature. It's just like, I just know I want it to be like a little warmer or a little colder.
in
Or
the,
like, I'm gonna leave the AC on because it's a little cold out. I don't want it to like get into temperature and shutting off, and then like coming back on and shutting off.
well, the
coming back
old
on.
auto always felt like full fan blast, right? It's like, here,
Yeah.
just put on auto. And it's like, oh, this is great. This is the future as it's blowing your hair back. And
Yeah, the car's not even at operating
Dust in
temp,
your
so like if
eyes.
it's trying to get it to hot, it's just blowing ice cold like,
Right.
air at you for like the first like 11 minutes of your drive or whatever.
So good.
Yeah.
But like seriously, that's my favorite thing that doesn't suck is old tech having a lack of tech.
Yeah.
Like this stuff isn't gonna go bad. You don't need digital pixels aren't gonna burn out,
Right.
right? You can get in a 30-year-old, 40-year-old car and just drive it. Everything still works. Do you have a stereo?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a stereo,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah,
like
even less
for me, I
stereo.
think that's like a cool thing is the lack of tech. It dates a car too, man. Like there's nothing
Sure.
like in the interior and having something outdated that's not quirky and fun, but
Yeah.
something that's outdated that's just not useful. It's just taking up a lot of space and like makes regular operation a pain in the butt.
And you know what's part of that
Send it.
is I'm gonna segue from that into my next one. Is actual mother effing door handles.
Oh boy.
Where it's not a button you push and it pops, or it's not a you're inside and you have to push a button or do a song and dance for the door to pop up and pop open,
Okay.
and then you go like, I want a just, and then if you've got an issue, the battery dies, you got to find the secret hidden release,
Boy.
and so you've got a secret extra door handle that's just a cable. Like I find absolutely zero benefit in having an electronic pop, pop to release my door open than a physical pop, pop, pull the door handle, or internal door handle and push the door open. Like, I find no benefit in that, and extreme added complexity and annoyances. Or there's a Tesla, you walk by and the door handle and it comes on out for you. Just
Sure.
like, can I just like open the door?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Or like, for instance, this past weekend, I was at my brother's wedding, and there was a member of the wedding party. He was renting a 2021 Ford Excursion.
Okay.
This does have physical door handles. Okay.
They still have
You
the button
pull-
codes.
It does have the button codes, but it's a rental, so he didn't know.
How wild is that?
It's great.
That's still
It's a wonderful feature.
from the mid-90s.
Exactly. Yeah, from the big square pad in the middle of your skin that you have to push. But there was no, the keyhole has been eliminated, and he left his lights on overnight.
My keyhole.
And so-
eliminated.
No, never, not even plugged. But the car doesn't have, it's got a hidden, so we're like trying to find out, okay, where's the hidden, he left, battery died, so the fog wouldn't open it.
Gosh.
And thankfully I am prepared as gentlemen sometimes. And I brought jumper box.
Okay.
Jumper box, great, pop the hood, put the jumper box in, turn it over, let it run for a little bit, charge the battery up, good, you're good to go.
Absolutely.
You get home to your family. They have a hidden keyhole. Where's this hidden keyhole? So we're looking all over, on the bottom of the handle. It's not, maybe there's one in the rear hatch. You're looking around the rear hatch, can't find it.
Yeah.
Turns out if you pull the door the door handle and you hold it open, there's a little tiny hole, indescript little hole. Then you put the key, pull the key out of the fob and put it halfway in. It doesn't go all the way in, it goes like halfway in. And you wiggle it, and you gotta fight it, and eventually pops the door open. Which, okay, that's one of those things where if you don't know, it's a rental car, it's a unique situation. But like, I just want like a regular door handle. Like having like the magical one that does this or does that, or like on the inside, you push the button with your thumb, and then the door opens up, like on the C6 Corvettes and stuff like that. Zero benefit to my life. I just want the traditional cable actuated or linkage actuated. You pull the door handle, it opens every single time. I don't care if your car's actively on fire, or the battery's dead, or you're partying out in a tow yard somewhere. Same with like in the trunk, you go to a pick and pull and you try and open the trunk and it's shut and it's an electronic button. Oh, no one's ever getting into that trunk again. Sorry about you.
Agreed. It's like my Magnum SRT8 where the trunk has no way to open it except for the push button. So when the battery's dead, you can't open the trunk.
Right.
And to compound that, they put the battery in the trunk.
So you gotta like
crawl through the back seat.
The back. Yeah.
Good times.
It's good times. You got anything else on that front?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty quizzical right now. I don't know about you. Are you feeling quizzical? Or are you feeling
I don't know. Am I? Because you're coming at me, right?
Yeah, I am.
Oh boy. Let's hope it's not a Mitsubishi Cordia.
It stings.
Okay. I'm as ready as I ever will be.
So,
and
Frank,
for what?
You're ready for the print ad quiz we do?
Yes. How does this work, Chadwick?
Okay, we're going to omit obvious stuff that gives them a clear idea of what vehicle we are talking about. 3 guesses to get there. A little flexible on exact models sometimes. We have a little.
I may get the submodel mildly incorrect or something.
Friendly,
if it's a Victoria's Secret edition, I thought it was like the Bass Pro Sports edition.
Oh.
Like that, then maybe I'll get the nod. Let's see what you got for me, dude.
So let's read this ad. Okay. I've had tailored suits that didn't fit this well.
Oh.
Blank has a made-to-measure feeling. Its front bucket seats position you without compromise. Analog instruments are lit in high visibility red.
Oh.
Good hint right there. The control flanking its leather-wrapped wheel put you in complete command, and a responsive 16-valve, 175 horsepower, dual overhead cam engine, and standard anti-lock brakes put you at the cutting edge of the automotive fast track. All for thousands less than, I'm going to save that.
Okay, fair.
Okay. If this is your kind of blank, visit your blank dealer.
That's all they get?
That's it, my friend.
Okay, all right. The tables have turned, haven't they? So,
some good engine specs in there, though.
You said 178, 16 valve.
175.
175, 16 valve, dual overhead cam.
Yep.
Red instrumentation. BMW really liked to do, still in some regards, their red instrumentation lighting. I don't think that's what we're working with here, because I can't think of anything that would be 16 valve with that horsepower count from BMW. That's, quote, significantly less than, I bet you one of those brands that is listed on the ad is probably BMW themselves. So I'm going to say it's not them. That leaves, I know Mitsubishi did some stuff that have red gauge cluster lighting, but nothing I think that's going to fit the bill here, at least as USDM. Potentially Nissan did on some stuff in the 80s. Like I think Z71s, not Z71, sorry, Z31 300ZXs, although the engine's ruled out there. And I think some of the 200 SXs, although were ruled out there on the engine as well. I don't think on the, maybe on the 240 SX, but the engine doesn't fit. You know what this feels like? The engine spec there and red feels, are we dare playing in the quad 4 pool again?
That's a pool we like to frequent.
It is. That we like to dip our toes and other lower extremities dangle into the pool. So we've got You know, the people that like to build driving excitement, Pontiac, were known for some red gauges, if I remember correctly, at least some red lighting.
Yes.
Front buckets. You know who else really liked to tout ABS was GM. GM loved ABS on like center caps.
You would get
and
that.
on, like
Sometimes
the rear tail light on
sometimes
call
a
out.
chrome badge too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I can picture like a Chevy Lumina or something would do that. Boy, what was the Pontiac? I'm gonna say to get the ball rolling here. I'm going to say Pontiac Grand Am GT, circa 1991 final inch model.
Let's say this, Frank. The Grand Am GT has been made to measure. So I think you're a little early with the year, but we'll get it to you.
It's a little bit later.
It's probably going to be a
94.
93,
93.
94, yes. So what we're talking about here is a wild car, because I knew you were going to get the Quad 4 because it's the only thing that had those specs.
Yeah, it's kind of it. Like
The fun fact of this ad, man, and
Yeah.
good job. I just love always bringing the Quad 4 up when I can. Is because this car, let's just say it's a 93, the Quad 4, 185 horsepower, dual overhead cam. The other option was a 3.3 liter V6, 160 horsepower.
right. Yep.
That's 25 horsepower difference in a massive, entire liter of displacement.
Quad 4,
Lots.
baby. We gotta find a Quad 4.
Why can't we get one?
They've all been garbage piled a long time ago.
Jeez.
It's just a shame. I'd like to get a
I know it was a rough run.
Calais International Series.
God, though, there's just so much.
Okay, what were the competitors that was putting itself up against on the list?
Because then you would have just got it. I mean, you already got it, but all for thousands less than the imports, like a quarter Camry. So it wasn't obviously going to be a German, and it said import, so it would have narrowed down.
I suppose, because the Accord and Camry were the mid-size then.
Well,
They were
called
quite as
imports, so it
Sure.
would have been like
then
American.
American.
Yep.
But I couldn't think of any. It read like GM type copy.
Sure.
It's funny how we're getting like up on like the phraseology, tone and phrasing of like the various.
It's like perfect, and I'll show you the ad. I actually love these early mid-90s Grand Ams. I actually like them how they look. I had a 98.
Yeah, you know what? The look on that's held up pretty well.
Yeah, and the wheels, so they got the fan blade wheels. Some of them had the 3-spoke design. And it's just cool. And you could get a manual with the Quad 4. That's a pretty cool car.
Yeah, I still think if I had to pick my Quad 4 Poison, I would do the
I know,
the Calais and the Olds or the 4-4.
The Cutlass Calais.
The Quad 442.
Oh, yeah.
But
I do like this car, though. It's a good looking car.
it is, especially that white. White's a good color for that.
The Grand Prix had the Quad 4 too, so yeah, just a cool ad. And like I said, I try to celebrate all things Quad 4.
Yes.
Whenever we get a
Quad
chance.
4, baby, Quad 4.
Wow, sir, nailed it. Frank is
Yeah.
a master Quad 4.
Quad 4. And I've never owned one. I've never driven one.
I look every day for one though. That's the problem.
You get your Achieva SCX or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like
and
a really high flying one.
You're just looking at them, and then once you see V6, you just drop the ad, right? You just get out of the Facebook Marketplace ad because I don't want that 3.1 or 3.3 year.
Blowing head gaskets and intake leaks and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, the Quad 4, I think the highest was, they said 175 here, but they went up to 185 at one point.
I think there was even in like the Achieva SCX, I think there was like a very
Touch
limited
200, right?
Yeah, it was like
205.
I think it was 200 or 205, but they only made like whatever.
But they're selling this right
600
next to
or something.
the V6 that made less power.
Yeah.
What a time, GM. What a time.
Yeah, welcome to our podcast, your Quad 4 leader.
God, we need to get a Quad 4.
Quad, baby. Check out my quads. So, should we progress?
You want to celebrate?
We should celebrate. We should celebrate progress and progressing into us progressively getting addicted to PCP, which stands for
Project Car Progress. What have you done for your PCP fix this past week, my friend?
Well, the past week was tight because I was preparing to go to my brother's wedding, which I did survive.
Okay.
Thankfully, I vowed to take several months off from imbibing in alcohol after this week and weekend.
Okay.
To depickle my innards. So I didn't have a huge amount of opportunity to get too much progress done. I did make some headway, some progress on the little fan photo booth.
Yes.
It is operational. I did on Wednesday before I left. I took to a tap room and I drove it, which is always fun. I drive a K-van on American roads and try and go like legal speeds without people like think you're just like driving like a modified like golf cart or something.
Yeah, miniature ice cream.
Yeah, and they're trying to like run you off the road. Most people just get a kick out of it. You know, I'll drive, I'll get people rolling out of their window. Hey man, that thing's cool.
Right.
Whatever. And I'm like, bro, I'm trying to drive like 11 miles. It's gonna take me longer than average. Like I don't have time to talk. But thank you, I appreciate the sentiment and stuff like that. So that I got sorted out. And then when we drove to this wedding, we took the newly acquired hybrid Highlander.
Oh. The Highlander.
The High, that's right. Went out my High, and it is the 4-wheel drive High.
Oh.
So it's got all the EV kibbles and bits are in the rear.
That makes sense.
So there is no drive shaft or anything. It's got the 4-wheel drive as they call it.
Okay.
And like literally chain restrictions and stuff driving up to North Lake Tahoe.
A bit of
up at like the Donner Pass.
What kind of fuel economy did you see for your trip?
Got about combined there and back just about 27.
Okay.
27. But we put like literally brand spanking new Michelin all seasons I put on like the week before.
Good stuff.
So it performed very well.
Cool.
In the snow, which was great. Even with like the weird like not really all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. It's like a gas motor with a CVT up front and then like a standalone like electric motor driving a traditional diff in the back. It's kind of a weird setup, but it worked.
Cool.
Survived, and yes, if you're gonna go to the snow, buy new tires. Just do it. Yep, just do it. How about you?
Let's talk about this 2003 Honda Accord V6 Coupe manual.
I see her on the corner of my eye. She's
Pretty
girl.
She is a pretty girl at all, and she came with a lot of issues, like all pretty girls, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Don't dip your wrench in crazy, okay?
Yeah, don't do it. Unless you're mentally prepared.
Nope, we're stopping.
Emotionally prepared.
Physically, yeah.
Physically.
Economically.
So,
prepared.
this car had an interesting issue. So, these cars did have a lot of blower issues, things like that, where the blower would just stop working. You couldn't get your AC or heat to work. Mine was the opposite. The blower was constantly on. And you can go in, you could shut the AC off, you could shut everything off, and for some reason, it kept blowing. And you could redirect it. I could defrost constantly. I could cool my feet.
You can change the temp though, right? You get it to hot too.
You could do a bunch of stuff.
The fans always run.
You could not get it to stop blowing. So, the first thing you do is check relays. That sounds like a stuck relay in an old car to me.
Sure.
So I swap out the relays with known ones. Nope, keeps blowing. When I pull the relay, stops blowing. That makes sense. I
power
the circuit.
Power off,
Yeah. So you do fuses. All the fuses were good. Swap the fuses with good fuses. These are all cheap ways you should troubleshoot, guys.
Yeah.
Instead of like going to parts.
Move stuff around the fuse box.
Yeah. Last thing you do is spend money, right?
Yep.
So get all the way down to the resistor, which is a pretty big sensor that's plugged in right near the blower motor underneath the glove box.
Okay.
Pulled it out. There's an ohms test for resistance you can do. Test it exactly where it should. So a lot of people will say, oh, good, it's functioning. The resistance test is perfect. But what you don't want to do is do that because the sensor itself inside could still be conducting current just fine, right?
Yeah.
But if the sensor isn't operating properly, it could still be bad.
Right.
So what do? Spend 20-something bucks, get a replacement, plugged it in, hooked everything back up, start the car. It's done. No more air blowing. So just a reminder, I did troubleshoot everything that was free up until that point. But even if a sensor is showing the right test numbers, you still can't rule it out 100%. It's just a rudimentary test.
Right.
But that was it, replacing that resistor, and that's a big thing because there was something so annoying about air constantly. I mean, it was loud too. It was probably on like 4 or 5 speed setting. So yeah, just so big fix. Those are the little things I think you can fix. They take some diagnostic work, some troubleshooting, but those are big value adders because trying to sell a car where the air is constantly blowing is not going to make anyone happy.
No, not really.
Yeah, so I'm happy. And those can be like real head scratchers, real troublesome to sort, right?
Yeah, especially if you think you've got it pinned down to the wrong thing and you're pull the whole dash out. You've got the whole
blower motor taken apart.
Blower motor out. You've got the whole like switch gear assembly, the whole center console yanked out. You got all that out, and it's just like,
God.
Oh, I just have to pull this lower panel and get my head up under the glove box and swap this resistor out.
Yeah, and that had only a $20-something price tag on it. That didn't hurt too bad, and you can always return it if it doesn't work. But like doing those other steps are free, guys. So you always check your relays, your fuses, and work your way up.
Don't throw parts at the problem.
Do not throw parts. But that took care of it. So big fix. I was super happy.
Bitchin'.
Yeah,
that's we don't need to spend another hour talking a Cord V6 manual, but maybe we do. Maybe when it's done and it's ready to go, and
it's right there. Cool. Yeah, it drives well, and we'll go over some other things that I need to do. And
if you're in the market for a 6-cylinder manual Accord Coupe.
Yeah, first year you could ever get a V6 Accord with a manual.
That's right.
Pretty cool.
That's right. You can be the first or last on your block to have an Accord with a manual and a V6. Excellent. What else you got? That it?
That's it, baby.
That's it. Okay, that is all she wrote for today.
Close it up shop.
That's it. We're going to shut it down. Let's go home. Thanks for hanging out, y'alls. Follow us on all the grams and the things and the YouTubes. We are APA Podcast on Instagram. Another pointless automotive podcast on the YouTube. Where are you, my friend?
You can find me at Auto Obsessive Garage on YouTube. Some occasional Instagram presence. Give it a check out.
Yeah, and then me over here. I am at the Photographer's Garage on the YouTube and the Instagram.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in, as always.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for putting up with us. And we promise to be worse next week, so come and check that out.
Yeah, take care. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.